What tooth do you want to do it on? I want to do it on 14. Notice now, look at the icon down here. It's in the shape of an inlay onlay. I also want to make sure that I turn on my articulation. Okay? The milling device is not going to recognize it because it's not plugged in. But if it were to have a check here, you highlight it and it's ready to go. My material, well, it's going to default. It's going to default to a Serona block. I'm not going to mill this, but honestly, most of my onlays now and inlays I'm doing out of enamic. Why? I'm trying to simulate the same flexural properties of my material because it's contained within the walls of a natural tooth structure. Okay. It says, okay, Dr. S, are you sure you want to do an onlay on number 14 and it's articulating? Yes. I double click. So my onlay is not going to come up very well because it's opposing 2 crown preps. But that's okay, I'm going to show you the basics. Don't worry about it. But this is actually a good case in case it's not opposing anything. I'll show you how it does go out 1.5 millimeters and then it stops. Okay, so notice now it defaults to the upper jaw. Why? Because Doc, you told me it's an upper tooth. All right. So I'm going to take now my impression of an upper tooth. Notice I always start in the most distal part. I'm mostly indirect vision. Paying attention to this here. I want those walls. And now I'm going perpendicular to my prep. Okay. So now I'm going to take my lower jaw. Problem with this is, and again, you're going to put this where you want it. Some like it this way, some like it that way. Mike, you missed my beautiful bridge I did when I was in dental school. I got it on my computer, you can see it.
Actually, I think I saw it right as I'm walking out.
Did you see that? Is that a thing of beauty or what?
Nice.
Outlive the patient. That's a happy patient. No complaints. All right, let's do my lower. Now notice why this is going to be a problem, because I don't have anything opposing it, at least not crowns. I will put it to good use tomorrow when I show you how to do a quadrant. And notice I'm just hovering about a millimeter away, everywhere. Double reading the area. And then it adjusted itself, although I seem to still have 2 double imaging here. I hope it corrects itself. It did. Okay? All right, I need a buccal bite. Have the patient bite together. Patient sitting like this, back. I'll place it here. Notice I don't need anything more than that. And now I say next. The reason why I'm showing this is I do believe, and you know, this is always your, just adjust this real quick. See, I always tip it from the side, not in here. This is the fulcrum. It's harder to really move. I'll grab this, bring it up there. This is just to the point of being redundant. You all know how to do this stuff now. Drag it down. Now notice you know, clearance is gonna be a problem here, because I'm up against two crowns. Well, my analyzing tool model contacts is on. I'm okay to see where the contacts are, it's good, it's a good bite. So now I'll shut the model contacts off, and I have my bite. So that's not going to be a problem, but what did I say here? There's nothing opposing. It's gonna take this cusp, bring it out 1.5 millimeters beyond what it should, and it stops. Okay, I'll set my model access. We know how to do this. And again, that's why I like starting on the occlusal surface and finishing on the occlusal surface. It makes that I don't have to move this so far. Not perfect, but not that far. I go curve of Wilson. Why do I have that problem there?
I think it's backwards. Try and rotate 180 degrees.
What's
Looks like that's the inner side.
What's that?
It looks like that's like the lingual surface. of the teeth.
It is, isn't it? How did that happen? Why did it take the bite? There's my lower jaw. There's my upper jaw. And there's my bite. That's all right. You're right, there's something wrong with that.
Yep. Maybe it was the
Maybe it was the double image.
double image thing.
Well, I'm not gonna waste time because I don't want to take away from your time to work with this, but I'll just do this. And I'll just work with it. I'll have to go with this one.
Oh, you know what? It's reading that aren't.
I think it's right now, it's right, I'm okay. It's reading, it looks bilingual because it's that way. I think it's right. I'm not gonna, it's right. But I think something happened between the last time and this time. I didn't have any double things here. It's right. There's my distal cusp, my most anterior cusp, and now this is all right. Or should I say, all right, all right, all right?
It was
Use
probably
good.
the double image.
Yeah. No, all right, all right, all right. That's Matthew McConaughey. Remember he got up on his off and he goes, all right, all right, all right. Good old Texas boy. Dr. Nevins will be very happy with me. Texas guy, right? Okay, looks good. It's putting on the articulator. This is right. That's where it should be. Draw your margin, but doctors, this is where you have to go back and you have to trim the model. And the reason is, I will never be able to see that margin if it's not the way I want it without trimming it. So I'm gonna trim it. Good, so now I'll be able to see that margin like that. So I'll draw it. And now see how I can see that margin? Everywhere? Good. So now I'm going to draw my margin.
And this is not a bevel, I did touch it.
No bevel. I'm just following my margin. I'm staying above the cliff. That's all I'm doing, staying above the cliff. Now when I go down here, I stay above the cliff. Come up around the corner, I'm still staying above the cliff. And now I look at this and I don't like this, so I'm going to change it. I don't like this. Should have found that better, I don't know why I didn't. Okay. Now I define my insertion axis. Now with onlays, notice this prep though. See how that's a transition? It really is a transition. That's smoother. I would even made it even more smooth. But see how there's yellow there? That's an undercut. So I'm gonna position this so there's no yellow being seen. In other words, not only will my onlay just float in that, the milling angle, there's no undercuts here, and you sure don't wanna see an undercut in a margin here. There might be a slight one there, it's gonna mill past it. So I say, okay, and now I get my onlay. Wow, it is taking from the adjacent teeth. And this will always be in the right position. Why? Because there's a remaining two structure left. So it's always gonna be in the right position. The only it's gonna be is it's gonna be too big on that facial cusp because it has nothing to oppose it and see where it's supposed to be. Okay, so here's my onlay. That is a lot of anatomy. Probably too much anatomy. Actually, it did a much better job with this cusp than I thought I was gonna do. Look at that. Now, somebody asked me a question this morning, and I wanna make sure I got it. What is the difference between circular 2D and circular 4D? 2D takes a surface for as large as you want it to be or as small and moves it out, in, up, or down. 4D moves it in any direction you want. For example, if I go here to Tools and I go Shape 2D circular, then all I can take this cusp, I want to make this larger, all I can do is take it out or in, right? Up or down. It's two directional, okay? If I make it 4D, then I can take this in any direction I want. See? So that's how I would move a cusp in. So it's 4 directional. And I might use that tool right there, because it's just maybe out a little too much. Does that answer your question about 2D and 4D? I know somebody asked it this morning and I wanted to make sure. So I'm looking at this thing, so why don't we go through this now? Number 1, is in the right position? Sure, and I just moved that cusp. What's number 2? On your sheets, what does it say that how to design it? What's number 2? Thickness. How do I determine the thickness?
Analyzing tools.
Yes, sir. Analyzing tools, what?
Cursor details.
Cursor details, thank you. I go over and it says 1.41. So I'm looking now, it's 1.49 there, it's 1.3, it's 1.4, it's plenty thick in here. It's in here and in there. So I'm looking at this now, when I compare this anatomy to the adjacent teeth, what am I gonna do that's gonna make this thicker and more like the adjacent teeth? I'm gonna use one tool. Yes, sir. I'm going to smooth it. So I'm gonna keep my analyzing tools on. I'm gonna go to Tools, Form, Smooth. I make it the size of about 1/4, and all I'm gonna do is just gently massage this. Why? Because that kind of looks like the Sierra Nevadas there, and the adjacent teeth don't. Wonderful. Just by doing that, what is my fissure height now? 1.58. I'm good. I'm really good. That's the thinnest part. Right here, right now, that's 2.27. Okay? I'm really in good shape here. The other thing too is, if you run your cursor now, if you put your cursor here, it's not measuring it. It only measures it perpendicular to the surface. So if you're like this, it's not measuring it this way on your crown. It's measuring it this way. And that's why sometimes you'll see it's too thin up there. It really isn't too thin. All right, and let me demonstrate that. Because if I go now and I go to display objects and I remove my upper jaw and I turn to the side, see, it looks like it wants to measure it this way. But actually it's this way, the thickness. It's plenty thick. See what I'm saying? Plenty thick. Okay, what causes this right there?
Sharpness.
Yeah, it's not smooth enough. Very good. That's why I'm going in there with a red striped diamond. All right? So I'm plenty thick. It's not gonna show any color here. Why? It's opposing a prep 2. Tomorrow when I show you the quadrant, you'll see all blue in here. So now I'm thick enough. Looks good. What do I have to do now? I've got my dynamic occlusion. What do I gotta do now? Well, I'm going to use my articulation, dynamic occlusion. Got my static. Well, I don't expect to see anything there, do I? Because there's nothing there. Otherwise, I would. But what's fourth on the list? What do I have to do? Yeah, proximal contact. Display objects, trim my model. There's my contact. Are you kidding me? That's like perfect. It's just perfect. You can see my intaglio there. Looks good. All I gotta do now is mill it. Now here's something I want to show you. Where do you think it's gonna put this sprue?
The contact.
Yeah, it's gonna put it into proximal. Doesn't mean I have to take that. On an inlay, yes, I'm gonna get into proximal contact. That's the only place I can get it. On an onlay, all right, sure enough, my prediction, it's into proximal. Can I move that? Yeah. So if I right click and go on sprue, I'm gonna move it to the mesial buccal cusp. Now wherever this metal is, that's where the sprue's gonna be. I'll take it right there. That's not real close to the margin. If I moved it a little more, will I get a little, no, it's basically the same. So you see, I do have this. I don't want the sprue in here. It puts it there because it says that's the fattest place, and it is, and that's where it's going to mill the fastest. Is there really going to be any increase in milling time by me moving it to the facial? Not really. A couple of seconds maybe. I sure don't want that sprue there. So I'm done. This is ready to mill.
You said for inlay, you put it on the interproximal?
It has to be, because if it's MOD, then